Well, random question of the day to get us started. Potato chips. Everybody's favorite. I'm just going to say it's everybody's favorite. Do you guys have a favorite flavor? I'm going to come in right now and say, due to food intolerances, I have a love-hate relationship with potato chips. So flavors are kind of off the table. But I'll put it over to you two.
Salt. Salty flavor.
So like original, are you like a Ruffles, like a Ridges, or like a straight like classic Lay's?
It would probably be the Cape Cod potato chips. They're a game changer, but just the saltiness of them. If I had to pick a flavor outside of standard potato chips, it would be sour cream and onion.
I'd probably have to go like Harvest Cheddar from like the Sun Chips. I don't know if they're like considered chips.
I mean, they're chips.
Are they a potato chip though?
Potato chips.
They are not made from potatoes.
Like cheddar and sour cream Ruffles are, if I had to choose.
And you got to get the extra little salt within like the texture of it. Yeah, these like flat potato chips, don't know what those are. Nope. Okay. Well, on the vein of potato chips, which is a perfect segue to what we're talking about today, total sarcasm, we are following up on an episode that was published back at the end of January of the season. That was AJ, myself, and Matthew talking about using technology for employee engagement. Once we wrapped that episode, we were like, it would be great to take Todd's time, because he loves to talk, and ask him questions about all of his views from the leadership perspective on technology and employee engagement. A lot of big words there, but it's the Tech for Business podcast. I'm Kelsey. I'm a member of our marketing team moderating. Todd is our COO and CISO, and then AJ is a customer strategy advisor. I got that one right. CSA. There's a lot of acronyms in tech, but we're all sitting down. AJ and I are also members of our employee engagement committee, EEC, another acronym. But AJ, I'll pass it off to you to put our first question to Todd this morning.
Yeah. So kind of how have you seen, like, obviously, like with employee engagement, we've had to change how we're interacting with each other, with our workforce being primarily remote now. How has that changed, if anything, how you think about what you want to see us accomplishing?
Sure, thanks. So from my perspective, just kind of backing up a little bit, when we did not have a I'm sorry, I almost went strategic engagement. When we didn't have employee engagement team, we were a very much central Minnesota, western Wisconsin team, and everybody was in person on site all the time. And we had a tendency to do the same things over and over again, whether it was convenient or a few people liked it or whatever the case may be. We kind of went through a process, and I was kind of looking at it and I go, how do we know our employees even like what we're doing? Did we even ask? And the answer was no, we didn't. And so I said, well, why not? We should probably do that. And so that was kind of how things started originally. But to answer the question that you asked just now is, I feel it's incredibly important. We have employees that are across the country, so we have them everywhere. And when we used to be the traditional company that we've been around for 30 years, it was easy to just say, hey, we're going to meet up at whatever, baseball field, whatever the case may be. We're going to go to an amusement park, and everybody just gathered if they wanted to. And now you're like, well, that's not all inclusive. We've got half our staff in various places from Florida to Alaska and everything in between. When you look at that, you go, how do we make sure that we try to keep everybody engaged? How do they feel like they're included? I know from my perspective, you see so much about people quitting and not being able to go to their jobs. And if they can work remote, that's what they're going to default to. And while I think that's fantastic, I think you lose pieces of what traditional bonding human culture is based on social interactions. And if you don't have any capabilities of doing that in any form, they're automatically excluded. Now, obviously, there's introverts that would much rather prefer to be completely left alone. However, even they do like some interaction and feel like they're part of a team as well.
I was going to say, for everybody listening here, as I just kind of rolled my eyes, because I'm like, yeah, I'm that person that I was onboarded remotely. So for me, I'm like, I've heard of these things, never experienced that part. So that's been an interesting to go. Yeah, for me, it's just normal to go, I'm going to chat my work bestie who's in Anchorage. It's casual. Like, never going to probably meet this person in person, maybe someday in the future, but that's fine and that's not odd to me. So that's an interesting point just to put forward, just to talk on that just a little bit. But AJ, I totally talked over you, so go ahead.
No, that's okay. And I think part of it is, like Matthew is in, a remote look. He's in Alaska, and he did it. He's one of the people who is just like, hey, cool, I want to be part of it. But I could see, like, Todd, from your perspective, like trying to like elicit more of the remote feedback of like, okay, let's make sure we have somebody. It already happened, so that conversation didn't need to happen, but I can see how, as from the leadership perspective, it's like, hey, somebody who is on all these meetings should be not capable of going to everything because they're remote. And so I could see, you obviously didn't have to have that conversation, but I can see that conversation coming through of being like, hey, this has really changed. Let's make sure we're including these people. So I think that's important too. We kind of just had that dynamic already because Matthew was outgoing enough and wanted to be part of it. And we've gotten more, remote employees who join. So that's, it's nice just to be able to throw stuff to him. Has your thought of the number of events changed, or like that you want to like see? Because like we do the traditional, like, I think everybody has like the end of year or like the once a year, like bigger kind of event. Is there other things that you like to see, with these remote capabilities?
I think for us, and this may not apply to most organizations, although I think it is relatively common from a lot of the places that I've worked in the past, we try to do 2 things a year. So we try to do something in the summertime, and then we also try to do our end of year celebration in some shape, manner, or form. And that number feels pretty good. There are things that I just feel like you kind of got to keep things going, otherwise people don't feel like they're included. It's, I never talk to those people, or I don't get the opportunity to see people, or whatever the case may be. So I think it's important to do it more than once a year. At least that's my perspective on it. I did want to kind of expand on the working remote thing and trying to get those in people in the engagement, especially if you have a committee. I think it's incredibly important, right? If you don't have that, how do you know you're getting what you need? Now, Kelsey said she's been remote, she works remote. That's kind of the way things are for her, but I do see her from time to time in person. So she has the opportunity to get together that they don't. And so you kind of look at that and you go, what? Again, I don't know how I include them unless I ask. And one thing, and I know I'm completely off the topic that you asked originally, but I'll try to get back, I swear. I may not. Is I don't know what that would feel like. I'm not that person. I'm a little more social. I like to talk. I want to be in person. I like shaking hands and kissing babies. That's kind of my thing. Well, it's winter here. You get sick when you kiss babies, so don't do that. Anyways, so as we go through that, sorry, I want to make sure that we're talking to them. So actually, for what it's worth, when we do our onboarding process, I talk about the employee engagement committee to every employee that we bring on and saying, we've got this team. They do a lot of really great things, whether it's trying to do book clubs or how to engage things throughout the year, whatever the case may be. They're doing a lot of those things. They're always open to having people join too. So if it's something that you're interested, it's easy enough to figure out how to move forward on it. But then I do remember very specifically encouraging Matthew to join. I was like, I don't know how to engage you. You're in Alaska. I'd love your feedback. From a leader's perspective, one of the biggest concerns I had with it, and I've shared this with you guys in the past, is I don't want to be the guy that shows up and says, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And the reason is I don't want to be the influence that says, well, Todd mentioned it. He clearly wants to do it. We should figure out how to make that happen. And I just want it to be like, it was just an idea. You don't have to do anything with it. But I want that team to not have that top-down influence that says, you got to think about this and you got to think about that. That team knows much better what's important and meaningful than I do. I tend to get a little disconnected because, like I said, I want to be in person. I want to shake hands. I want to go do the thing.
How has your thought about like spend changed? Because it's, we have the things that didn't cost money at the office when we were in the office was like we would play basketball or bags, or it was a minimal cost, or we'd do a grill out, which was maybe a couple $100. But there's a lot of different spends that we have now. Thankfully, we've found ways to not do it. Of like the book club, it's just creating a regular meeting that reoccurs third Thursday. Okay, everybody knows, and encouraging other people to do that. But when it comes to other outreach for remote employees, has it changed kind of how you think about the spend per employee, or what's that kind of thought process like?
I think the answer is yes. It just naturally had to happen. There are things that definitely come up just thinking about spend in general. Kelsey had mentioned it earlier. I may never see that individual aside from video. What would that be like? And it often comes up and says, what would it be like if we had some sort of outreach where we had people have the capability of meeting us someplace? So there have been things that we've done that are somewhat creative. I don't think they've been formalized, but I'll use an example as from time to time, we'll bring people to conferences that may or may not have had an opportunity to do that in the past. So for example, our security team said, I'm going to be at this conference. If you'd like to join us, we can figure out how to meet up and get together for dinners or whatever the case may be. Those were very easy to do because it was already business related, and it wasn't like, well, what I'm really going to do is I'm going to fly you to Minnesota, and then we're going to put you in a hotel, and you have to come into the office, and you have to meet all these people. Kind of a different experience, but it was something that you consciously look at and say, what does the budget look like for that? But then kind of expanding on it, there are a lot of other things that I think are great too. And again, this is where I think the power of the employee engagement committee comes from, is they have the capability of going and thinking outside of the box and says, what would be fun? What if we did Dungeons and Dragons? What if we did book club? What if we did? And most of those things you can do remote. As Kelsey mentioned, I have the CISO title, so I know that my security team does this, and this is maybe a little nod to an organization. It's free, so there's no cost associated with it, but there is a group called Black Hills Information Security, and they have a card game which somebody has turned into a web tool called Backdoors and Breaches, and our security team has got a schedule on a Friday evening where we're going to like 4:00 at night. We're just basically shutting it down. We'll be on call. We'll be shutting it down and just kind of going, all right, we're going to work through this as a game. And the intent is to have fun, team building, etc. But there's no cost to it other than our employees are there. So kind of like you said with the bags and the basketball hoops, there's creative ways to still get that engagement, still have things that are very team building type things. And then also it is important to do the additional spend on things that do matter. Like when we do our in-person events, this is something that maybe is obvious. I don't think it is, but maybe it is. When we do our in-person events, we kind of say, we think that cost is whatever. I'll just use a random number. Please don't put anything on this. It's just a number. It's going to cost us about $500 an employee to have that event. We want to then take that dollar amount and say, we're going to make that available for the people that flat out can't make it. So we'll just do something that's in a similar vein. That may be a gift. It may be a party, whatever the case may be. There was a conversation that said, what if we had a group? Hypothetically, we had 4 employees that were in a single city and they could easily get together. What if we funded the dinner? What if we funded the party? Whatever the case may be. Those are absolutely things we want to consider and find ways to make happen so we can still celebrate our organization amongst ourselves.
Well, this is a little bit of a tangent off what you're talking about, but maybe think of it as right before everybody was in the same spot. And now we've not only gone remote, but we've also gotten bigger. So, right, previously, if we were saying, oh, yeah, there's 50 people, that's easier to work with and to budget for than right now. You're saying, okay, the security team does this and they do that and they do these things, which is great. But then how do you look at it and say, what does that look like? I'm part of a 2-person department. Spoilers. So, right, that's a little bit different than I'm like, yeah, Tara and I talked for 5 hours yesterday. Casual, that's just getting work done. But right, as teams grow, there's so many different dynamics. How do you look at that and how do you kind of prioritize and foster that?
Well, the fostering is being supportive, at least from the leadership aspect of it. I want teams to feel like they're empowered to do the things they need, and then if they need funding, if they need encouragement, whatever the case may be, that's typically what I expect them to come back and say, "We're thinking this. What are your thoughts? How can we make that happen?" There are times when, as you mentioned, there's budget concerns, and we go, "Yeah, no, but let's think about how we can make that happen next year." Um, there is our accounting team actually did a team gathering, and they're all local, but they all went out to lunch the other day, and they managed to take their lunchtime and do their team building and had a meeting during lunch, etc. So there are ways of doing some of those things, and but again, I'm not necessarily fostering it as much as I'm encouraging it and saying, yeah, do what you need to do. I'll happily pay for lunch. That's no problem.
Saying choose your adventure. I like it. And this is a little bit maybe off topic, but because I'm on social media too often, I just saw something that was like, right, don't expect your employees to spend their evening time or their weekend time. Because we did see that as an EC that we were like, oh, we'll get together on a Sunday and we'll watch football. And everybody was like, I don't really want to drive to Woodbury and watch it when I can watch it at home on my couch with my family. And I was like, I get it. We still put it out there as a thing. And people were like, nah. And we were like, well, that's the answer. We'd rather have you say no than say yes and then not like it. Granted, that wasn't a forced thing, but right, I've never been to one of those things, but there's certain, right, that we could easily fall into that bracket of going, we're spending the money, you got to be there, it's important for you to be there. How do you kind of walk that fine line of saying, hey, you don't have to just use your lunch, you don't have to use your Friday night? What are your thoughts on using work time for team building?
Yep. Yeah. So again, my point of what I was saying is they happened to do it over lunch, but it could have been at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd have been completely fine with that. I mean, again, one thing I think people forget is we used to do a lot of that in person. When I worked in other organizations, they always called it the flypaper meeting, right? Somebody walked by and they kind of got sucked into a meeting. And a lot of times it's just a casual conversation. There's nothing to it. Those happen, and those, in my opinion, are important conversations. You're having them today in a modern world with the new tools, et cetera. You're typically having them via chat or, hey, can you jump on a quick call or whatever the case may be. They're still happening. They just don't tend to happen in groups as much. But going back to where I was originally trying to make my point is, it's what you expect is an organization has a certain amount of time that isn't expected to be, you must be at your keyboard for 9 straight hours. That is not the intent. Organizations don't actually expect that of you. I shouldn't say that. There may be some organizations that expect that out of you, but most organizations don't, right? They understand that people get up, they stretch, they go to the bathroom, they get coffee, what all of that matters. And in fact, there's tons of studies out there that say if you get up and you walk around, your mind works differently and you can actually solve problems better by doing those kinds of things. So in my opinion, those things are very, very important. And again, kind of getting back to where I was intending to say this is there are times that I would anticipate that there is an extra, if you're not in video, you can't see me doing the quotes, productive periods of time where people are pounding away on the keyboard. That is not what it should have to look like. The security one, it's at the end of the day, and it could potentially go an hour past the end of the day for work. If it does, people can drop off. It's totally fine. But it was intended to be during the workday, so we were carving out a portion of the workday, saying this is what we're making time for. Now, in that particular case, that group does potentially have to be on call and could potentially get pulled over for an emergency of, hey, we need you to work on this, or drop off for 10 minutes while they look at something. All of that is perfectly acceptable, but the intent was still to get the engagement, the team building, doing all the things that are important. Not every team is like that, though, or there are emergencies popping up all the time.
No, and I wasn't. That sounded like I was poking on those going, they were at lunch. That was their after. Not what I was saying. But right, I mean, that's kind of a good point of it's a Friday afternoon. There's probably less emergencies coming through on a Friday afternoon. So you're being strategic about the time frame that you're picking instead of Monday morning when everybody's forgot their password. I'm pointing at myself when I say that, not anybody else, but just side notes there. But I think too, where was I going with that? I was going with even right for marketing, we're not customer facing. So Tara and I one day literally went and just painted pottery because we were like, it's creativity. We also did an event venue tour and other things layered in those days that we were like, because we're going to be here, let's do that because there's 2 of us. And that's kind of the getting up and walking around thing. Because as you say that, I'm going, yeah, do I take those breaks?
It's easy to forget to take them, right? And when you're at the computer and you're chatting and whatever, it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to tangent off too much, but it's like, like even just getting a cup of coffee in the office, like, or water or whatever beverage you um indulge in, is, it's easy to tangent sometimes and like be able to talk to somebody when you don't have that. So I think fully utilizing the tools and being able to enable the teams to be like, hey, here's the tools in order to work together better. I know that that's something that we're working on in the EEC, is like kind of having that like kit that like on that onboarding that you talk to people, Todd, is that you can give that, hey, if you really want to have a frisbee golf group, here's how you set it up, like here's a basic toolkit on like what we're hoping for. Or if you want to start a little like knitting club and you want to meet remotely and do that, here's how you do it. So I know that that's something that we're working on, that we'd like to provide to you, but I feel like that is kind of a toolkit that I would like, that I feel like is important for the organization. So.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Again, I love Kelsey's comment too, which I think wasn't exactly designed to tie to what you just said, but the creativity of doing something that helps you think of new things and go through a process that kind of goes, well, what if this, what if I had a toolkit, etc. I think it's outstanding. I love it.
Is there anything else on that vein that you either have, like, I don't want this to be like a critique of EEC, but like something that like we've done or implemented that you like, or something that you haven't liked, or something that we can like learn from, like, oh, that event didn't go how we wanted it to, kind of thing? Any examples like that?
No, from my perspective, there aren't any negatives that went with it. You'll bear with me as I go tangenting across the country, but it's what I do. Some of the most amazing, productive, efficient, effective teams are the ones that are self-forming. So again, if anybody knows me, some of them that I really enjoy listening to is a Simon Sinek. Self-forming teams are amazing, and our EEC team is a self-forming team, right? All we said is, here's a concept, what would you do with it? The team got themselves together, they invited people, they expanded, they pulled in additional people as needed. It's an incredibly powerful process, and I've purposely kept my fingers out of it. Like I said, I don't want to influence it, but it's doing exactly what I would have dreamt of if in a perfect world, what would it look like? It looks like this. I didn't have anything to do with it other than, let's see what this looks like and start to move it along, and hopefully it goes. So from that perspective, I think that if anybody's out there that's interested in what it potentially looks like, we can certainly have conversations about it, because we have one, and in my opinion, it's an incredibly powerful, effective process. But ultimately, from my perspective, the fact that it's self-designed, it's bringing its stuff up, it's creating ideas, even when things don't go right. The football example that you mentioned earlier is a great one, right? We think this is a good idea, we're going to throw it out to the world, and the world says, nope, that was terrible, we're not doing that. Great, we still tried, but we learned, right? We understand that, Kelsey's point, maybe afternoons, evenings, and weekends aren't the time that people want to put their work hats back on or even gather. So if that's true, let's pivot and change. And I think that group has been tremendously adept at doing that. Adept. They've been adept at adapting.
Any of the 8 words.
All of them.
All of them. Which I know we're kind of getting close on time, as much as I could open up a whole nother tangent. But AJ, do you have anything else that you'd like to kind of comment on?
No, we've obviously, outside of podcast format, we've heard, Todd's feedback, and we appreciate that. But just, having that open conversation between the leadership and whatever group that is really paramount, of just, being like, hey, you're doing a great job, and having that feedback. We had a recent, employee survey that had that culture and involvement. So getting that feedback as well, being like, are we doing the right thing? Because it's like, it's easy to see, other metrics, work related, closed tickets, hours worked, like response times. You can see other processes coming through, but employee engagement is a little harder to kind of get a grasp on. So having some sort of survey was really nice for us to have some of that feedback, and know that, as an EEC, Todd appreciates what we're doing. He likes how we're doing it on a leadership side, but also like on an organization side. That feedback was nice as well. And honestly, like, we've been doing this over a year and a half, 2 years.
It's like a year and a half, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like it's taken a while to like get it going, but I feel like we're in a good spot as well. So if anybody is out there and they want to create this committee, it's not going to hit right away. You're going to hit some spots where it's okay, that didn't work, or this is working. Stick with it. In the end, it's, you get the things that work for your organization, and what worked for your organization may not be what works for other organizations. So keep trying things, keep people engaged, and, just continue working through it.
That's the best way to close it out. I'm like, I could keep on going, but that was so beautiful that there's nothing else I could say beyond, yeah, you can always connect with us on LinkedIn or via email if you want to talk to us. But right, that's kind of a whole separate, but I will wrap us out. But thank you, Todd. Thank you, AJ, so much for sitting down and chatting today. If anybody does have questions for any one of us, you can reach out at info@cit-net.com. We'll give you our LinkedIn right through there, so send us an email. Or else you can always go out to our website at www.cit-net.com/podcast, and we'll be back next week with another episode.